Sunday, September 24th, 2006. Tampa Bay versus the Carolina Panthers. Quarterback Chris Sims has taken hit after hit and is clearly in pain.
In between plays, he's hands on his knees, his head is down.
But Sims somehow engineers a fourth quarter comeback that will be remembered in Tampa Bay for years to come. It was only after the game and in the hospital that doctors discover that Sims has suffered a dangerous and potentially life-threatening injury, a ruptured spleen. So the question is, how much force does it take to rupture a spleen? And how did Chris Sims continue to play while suffering from internal bleeding? To find out, the sports science team begins with the creation of a biofidelic dummy. An anatomically correct torso containing realistic synthetic organs. But the spleen we're adding isn't synthetic. It's a real spleen. A real pig spleen. Turns out a pig spleen and a human spleen are very similar in size, weight, and function. A spleen acts as a filter against foreign organisms that infect the bloodstream. It rejuvenates old blood cells via the splenic artery, supplying blood to organs throughout the abdominal cavity. With such a significant volume of blood coursing through this organ at any one time, rupturing the spleen can be catastrophic.
A ruptured spleen is extremely dangerous because the spleen is a very vascular part of your body. It gets blood in, it filters it, it takes blood out. So a laceration to that, especially a large laceration, can bleed out in a very short period of time.
Now that we have a stand-in for Chris Sims and his spleen, we need to replicate the punishing impacts he suffered during the game. So we brought in the best organ basher on the planet, MMA legend, Bas Rutten. Bas's punches have been measured at over 1,200 pounds of force, roughly the same amount of force as getting crushed by All-Pro linebacker Joey Porter. One of Bas's punches will be equivalent to any one of the numerous punishing hits Chris Sims suffered that day.
I'm Bas Rutten, and I'm a professional spleen buster.
Bas Rutten, thank you so much for coming in and helping us out here.
Hey, no problem.
We're going to bust a spleen.
I love it.
Have you ever destroyed someone's vital organ?
Yes, actually I did. I broke somebody's liver one time. That's the left hook to the body that's located right here.
To show how vulnerable Chris Sims' spleen was the day he went down, Bas has agreed to attempt to rupture our surrogate organ.
What kind of punch are you going to be doing?
Not an uppercut. It's not going to be a straight. It's not going to be a hook. It's going to be all of the above. That's the best way to dig it in. Normally they give a hook to the spleen. I don't do this because if somebody pulls himself away, I miss right away. So I kind of stab it in. That's, I think, the best way to hurt somebody there on the spleen, solar plex, or the liver.
Sims got hit dozens of times in the game, but Bas only gets one shot.
Ooh, he's bleeding.
Nasty. On the inside.
He's bleeding badly. Let's peel this back and look at it. This is the moment that we've really been waiting for. We want to see what happened to the spleen. That is disgusting.
And you're touching it.
Bas's punch measures at over 1,300 pounds of force. Team physicians couldn't pinpoint which hit caused Chris Sims' spleen to rupture. But our scientists estimate this hit comes closest to generating the same force as Bas Rutten's punch. So how did Sims survive this devastating injury? Our motion tracking technology gives us an inside look into the science of a ruptured spleen. A direct blow to the left side of the abdomen can bruise or tear the spleen. Because of the abundant blood supply, splenic trauma leads to serious internal bleeding, with the entire abdominal cavity eventually filling with blood. One thing that was working in Chris Sims' favor was that he was bleeding fairly slowly, losing blood at the rate of about 4 drops every second. At that rate, in 2.5 hours, he lost 5 pints of blood, which doesn't sound like much, but 5 pints is more than half a gallon. That's over half of all the blood in the human body. About 12 hours after the game ended, Chris Sims no longer had a spleen. Doctors removed it. But it shouldn't affect his quality of life.
The complications of that for him will be relatively few. He will have to take some precautions in terms of certain bugs that the spleen would normally kill. Other than that, his immune system will function well after regular monitoring.
Because of injuries like Chris's, more and more quarterbacks are wearing protective flak jackets, and team physicians around the league continue to learn more about diagnosing injuries during games.
Can I write a letter to that pig later that I'm happy that he donated his spleen?
Next, conventional sports wisdom holds that hitting major league pitching is the hardest thing to do in sports. But here in our lab, a softball superstar begs to differ. Jenny Finch lets it fly as science takes a swing at a myth. And later, when your jugular vein is slashed on the ice, how much blood can you lose and still survive? Clint Malarchuk is here with the unbelievable details. Some people think that hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. Is that true? We found someone who wants to put that myth to the test. Meet Jenny Finch. Jenny is a 6-foot-tall Olympic gold medalist and NCAA Pitcher of the Year. She believes that hitting a softball is harder than hitting a baseball and is here in our lab to prove it. To start, we wanted to compare the force with which a baseball and a softball arrive at home plate. The harder it hits, the harder it is to hit.
And we have our strike force plate behind here to actually measure the load or the force that the ball generates when it impacts. Basically, all you have to do is have the pitch break through these 2 beams and hit that plate, and we'll be able to collect the force that's generated.
First up, baseball. Cal State Fullerton flamethrower Adam Jorgensen will see how much force his 95-mile-per-hour fastball creates. The 95-mile-per-hour fastball generates 2,411 pounds of force when it hits the strike force plate. Now, let's see if the softball generates more or less force than the baseball. Jenny's pitches will provide unprecedented data, so we can determine once and for all which contains more force, baseball or softball.
You just broke it. Look.
Coming in, they told me that I was going to throw against some scientific gear, and my goal was to come in here and break it. And that's what we did.
Jorgensen's missiles generated an impressive 2,411 pounds of force. Jenny's first pitch broke the machine. We're going to give round 1 to Jenny. With her high-tech equipment smashed to bits, we decided to test baseball versus softball by bringing in a live research subject, Arizona Diamondbacks prospect, Brian Byrne. Brian hit .310 last season in the minor leagues. First, he's going to face our baseball flamethrower. Brian has no problem hitting 95 miles per hour baseball pitches. He's a pro. Now it's Jenny's turn, and Brian has to hit off a pitcher like none he's ever faced, and from a lot closer. Let's just hope she goes easier on him than she did on our gear.